law center in the Ukrainian Legal Foundation. He's on the Council of Europe on the Venice Commission. And I'll tell you, he's also in the Supreme Court, I think, of Ukraine now. I think that comes up later. Bohdan Budzan, former top-ranking Canadian government bureaucrat, was one of the people that went over there, and he notes that several Canadians, including a number of Edmontonians, are helping his organization spearhead reform efforts and rebuild the civil service. Aha. So now we have Soros rebuilding the finance department, the legal system, and the civil service. George Soros' foundation at that point was called the Renaissance Foundation. It's a non-political organization, it says, backed by U.S. financier and public activist George Soros. This year alone, Soros has given the Kiev-based foundation more than $10 million US, a sum higher than many Ukrainian government departments operate on. This is all in the early 90s. In 1994, so this is 3 years after her reforms or into her reforms, it says that everything they built is, quote, under attack as the economy staggers and the country's rulers show signs of returning to their old repressive ways. Right? I'm not so sure that that was the problem, frankly. What was happening in Ukraine at that time, inflation was 9,000%. 85% of the population lived below the official poverty line. 1/3 of the country's large factories have been shut down. This journalist who went over there, he says, outside of Africa and maybe Haiti, Ukraine has to be the worst run country in the world. Fail, George Soros. You failed. You're a failure. You would think any self-respecting person, anyone who actually believes in human rights and the right to self-determination and autonomy and anti-corruption, you would think that he would back off. But he didn't. He's never left Ukraine. He just keeps meddling. Here's an article from 2004, which was the run-up to their next big revolution. 2 students expelled for mayonnaise throwing at George Soros. And in 2004, Soros engineered the Orange Revolution, a series of protests and political events that took place in Ukraine from late November 2004 to January 2005. In the immediate aftermath of the runoff vote in the 2004 Ukrainian presidential election, which was claimed to be marred by massive corruption, voter intimidation, and electoral fraud. And that's because the wrong guy won. The guy Soros wanted to win lost by a tiny percentage. What happened? The Supreme Court, bought and paid for, remember, by Soros's money, they overturned the results. They overturned the results of the election, causing another vote, and wouldn't you know it, their people won. Viktor Yushchenko and Julia Tymoshenko won. Viktor Yushchenko won the presidency. She ended up being prime minister. Yushchenko got poisoned. Tymoshenko ended up in prison. You know who put her in prison? He did. It's a complete mess. And by the way, all these people are oligarchs themselves. I don't know how George Soros can be so bad at ending corruption when he's in charge of the legal system, the civil service, the Supreme Court, the president, and has liaisons in the World Bank. How could he be so bad at it? Is he bad at it or does he like it? So here was the end of the glorious Orange Revolution where these two got installed into power. And here's what happened. Svetlana Osipchuk was there in the square in 2004. The unity of 2004 is broken now. The unity broke quickly. After taking office, Yushchenko made Tymoshenko prime minister, but the two soon became rivals. And today, many of their once ardent supporters say the economy is in bad shape, politics remains corrupt, and that revolutionary spirit is gone. They blame Yushchenko and Tymoshenko. Now, a lot of people can say that, people are just dumb. They voted for the wrong candidates. But did they? The other guy won at first. Somebody made sure that that didn't happen. Who knows what it'd have been like if he had won. In this article here from The Guardian, 2004, U.S. campaign behind the turmoil in Kiev. The Democratic Party's National Democratic Institute, the Republican Party's International Republican Institute, the U.S. State Department, and USAID are the main agencies involved in these grassroots, quote-unquote, campaigns, as well as the Freedom House NGO and billionaire George Soros' Open Society Institute. It says, if the events in Kiev vindicate the U.S. in its strategies for helping other people to win elections and take power from anti-democratic regimes, it is certain to try and repeat the exercise elsewhere in the post-Soviet world. And I think we see it happening. I think we see it happening right now in the United States. It was not orange, was it? It was pink. And then in 2013, 2014, we had Euromaidan happen. Another revolution in the Ukraine. Same exact formula. Look at what it was supposedly based on. Supposedly, just normal people and students got out there on the street in numbers because of a decision by the government not to sign the Ukraine-European Union Association Agreement. That's why, supposedly, they had this bloody revolution where people died. People were burned alive in a building because their government decided not to sign on with the European Union, really? And they give us other factors. Their classic anti-communism and anti-corruption. No, I think it was all about the European Union. I don't think it was actually grassroots, though. I think we had the regime, the color revolution system in play, the civil society's call to action, the European Union using students, the excuse of anti-communism and anti-corruption, driven on by fake news, and that produces a color revolution. If you want to know much more about all of this, Oliver Stone's Ukraine on Fire is a good documentary, but watch out. Do you know what the fake news civil society organizations have done? There's another documentary, and I believe it's also called Ukraine on Fire. It's very similarly titled, and it takes the exact opposite opinion of this one. Of course it does. Of course it does. That's what they do. And also, Lee Stranahan. Love him or hate him. And I respect Lee. He has done excellent, thorough work on Ukraine, including all the stuff with the current attempt to bring down Trump. Alexandra Chalupa, the DNC, CrowdStrike, all of it. Lee's your guy. Go and learn from him. Because I'm telling you, I don't know a lot. I'm just bringing you information that I've found, as I've said already. All right, now we're going to get into the Liberal MP Chrystia Freeland on Ukraine. This is in 2014. This is before she was Minister of Foreign Affairs. Okay, she has no qualifications to be a Minister of Foreign Affairs. She's being interviewed about the Ukraine. Freeland happens to own, with her sister, an apartment that overlooks the Kyiv Square. She had a front row seat to the Maidan revolution, the Euromaidan crisis. She speaks Ukrainian. She studied in Kiev during 2 stints back in the late 80s and early 90s. Oh, right when he took command of the Ukraine, and actually right when her mother was reforming the legal system. So remember, her mother has a direct connection to George Soros because he funded the Ukrainian Legal Foundation, which she founded. Chrystia Freeland's granddad was indeed a Nazi collaborator, we learn. You can pause and read this if you like. There are lots of documents to prove it. Here's some pictures. This is him right here, her grandfather, Michael Chomiak. And this is Emil Gassner, the Nazi administrator in charge of the press, was a quote-unquote journalist. He was one of these people that slipped